we become what we think about. And as Manis had been mentioning, because we were texting back and forth, and he's like, man, the words and how they're powerful and how they affect us. Immediately, I thought of Earl Nightingale. And so that's kind of what has led us to, it's like, hey, let's dive in. Let's do a deep dive into one of the book called The Strangest Secret. Welcome to In Tune with Watson Tunez. I'm Watson Tunez, your host and pop rap recording artist. My music is part of the Live Beyond You Service Challenge, a charitable endeavor to promote community service and to help your favorite charity win up to $5,000. Visit livebeyondyou.org for more details. In 2015, I founded Beyond Me Initiative, a nonprofit and social enterprise empowering people to live beyond themselves and embrace a life of service, compassion, and generosity. Let me give you the behind-the-scenes insight into my music and humanitarian journey. My goal is to inspire you not only to live a better life, but to also make a difference and contribute to building a more caring society. Enjoy today's episode and subscribe to Watson Tunez with a Z on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. This is officially our first kind of my interview with other people and bringing somebody else in here. So let me know what you think. Let me know, what other people that, you think that we should bring on board to be part of this podcast, In Tunes with Watson Tunez. And most importantly, man, you guys are the very reason why I do this. And so let me know in the comments. Leave a comment. Let us know. Share, like, subscribe. You can hit us up on our YouTube channel, Watson Tunez with a Z, official. Look for me there, and I'll see you guys in the comment section. And let's continue to go out, bring healing to the world, and live according to our purpose and what we're born to do. A little bit about Manis and everything is we got a chance to really connect during the early days of Beyond Me. But before that, we were doing some Haiti mission trips, attending the same church, everything. And for a long time, Manis and I, we have just been wanting to do this this podcast and everything. It's been an incredible journey, and really appreciate him taking the time to do this. And I hope you guys will get a lot of value out of this from not just talking about those of you that do want to make a tangible difference in the world and impact and everything, but also talking about the power of our words and our ability to, if we can clearly define what we really want and our mindset and everything, and look for those opportunities, to make it happen. And I think that's just something that is, super, super important and everything. So I'm super glad that Manis and I got to connect in this way. And so these are little ways, that we're going to be able to make an impact. All right, so everybody, welcome back. This is In Tunes with Watson Tunez, and I'm with I got the homie in the house today. I always call her Manis. It is so great to have you to be able to sit down and have a conversation with you. So
thank you.
Welcome and everything. So we are just kicking things off. Since you're new and everything, tell us a little bit about yourself, and tell us how we met, and just a little bit of your background, and then we'll kind of dive in.
How we met, almost 20 years ago, 16 years ago at least, if not more.
I know.
I think we were in Haiti at the same time at one point, and then we met at Cornwall Church, and then we and help me fill in the gaps here, right? Because I'm
Absolutely.
old now. but yeah, I mean, we started talking. You know, I was a part of some nonprofit organizations that I'd helped start. You wanted to start one. You know, we went through the paperwork process. You filed it. You got it done. It's turned into all of the different variants of Beyond Me, which you've been doing now for about 10, 15 years, give or take. So, yeah. So, you know, I was kind of around at the start, and you have been gracious enough to call or email or text just to check in and chat. As far as myself goes, I spent about 12 or 13 years as a political strategist, political consultant. My interests tend to be in biblical studies, language, mathematics, things like that. As we'll talk about today, kind of words and how they affect us. You know, narratives. What are we telling ourselves? How are we telling ourselves this? You know, we're going to talk about a specific author and what he's written. But yeah, I mean, things like this are kind of fundamental to how I see the world. So I'm excited to have this conversation for sure.
Absolutely. Well, that's wonderful. You're also from Haiti, so kind of tell us a little bit. Just because Beyond Me for a long time, and we're not as much big, you know, Haiti driven as much as we were at the beginning, but for a lot of you guys that are coming in, tell us a little bit, what was your transition like from, you know, Haiti and now coming to just transitioning from Haiti to America?
Yeah, so I was actually born in the States. I was born in South Florida in a town called Naples. I spent most of my early life back and forth between Haiti and Florida. Now, Florida was pretty ravaged with the part of Florida I was in was poor, gang-related, tons of violence. It was similar situation in Cabaret, which is where most of my family's from. And father died really young. You know, most immigrant stories have a similar tune, right? So father dies young, mother takes up the role of the breadwinner. You know, she's working all day and all night. She goes through her own trauma, her own pain. I'm going through my own trauma. I also have siblings in Haiti that eventually immigrate over. There's, you know, for myself, for people like myself who are kind of who've been in the States for a while, who understand the Haitian culture and who understand the American culture, it's like there's this in between where so we don't quite fit both, and so it makes things complicated. You know, when I was growing up, Haitians were considered to be patient zero for AIDS, and so there were lots of violence towards Haitians because of that. You know, you had the images of the banana boats, you know, coming onto shore, which my mom and dad were on one, right, at one point.
Wow.
So in '78, so you know, those images coming on shore, people spilling out, you know, things like that. And so when I got older and I moved out to Washington, I really felt led. I really felt led by God, really, to do work in Haiti. So from about 20 to about 28. Helped start, I believe, 4 orphanages, 3 nonprofits, 2 successful microloan programs, and some other things as well. You know, just kind of help coordinate food situations and circumstances. And it was really a highlight for me in many ways. It was so very stressful. But it really was a highlight. I think when it took a turn for me was I was 26, 27. It was right after the last major earthquake, and I was traveling the entire country, and just the amount of apathy that I'd heard. So I expected people to be apathetic, the citizens and the Haitian people. I expected the Haitian people to be apathetic. But when I was hearing it from the NGOs, the Christian NGOs, the mainstream NGOs, people were like, you know, this is Haiti. Haiti will always be Haiti. You know, people were like, you know, Haiti needs a domineering hand, you know. And I was hearing all this language that sounded like, you know, control and domination. And so when I was going there, I was going to try to actually start a business incubator accompanied with a type of high school. And that's what I wanted to establish. But after traveling the country and hearing so much apathy, so many people just giving up hope, you know, it kind of broke me really. And so when I came back to the States, I was like, you know, like I've put so much time, energy, and money into trying to save Haiti. And I still have family there. My sister and her kids are there. One of my sisters, and you know, came back to the States, and I was like, I just need to find work, business. I need to just, you know, help sustain myself and whatever family I can. And so that's what I did. So and I did that for 13 years. I started the political business. I was pretty good at it. Some circumstances happened a couple of years ago where I decided to exit. But, you know, so it's mentally for me, you know, the idea of politics was being able to help someone with an idea or a vision of how to better their community's future, take it from 0 to 100, right? Kind of like just like a incubator. Yeah. And that's what I wanted to do in Haiti as well, right? Take young men, young women with ideas, take it from 0 to 100. But, you know, if everybody's apathetic, there's no basis to start. There's no emotion, there's no incentive, you know, there's no reason to do anything because the deterministic aspect of it is that we will fail.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, you're speaking not only, man, you're speaking my language, because that's kind of a sense of where we're at with Beyond Me. In one of the, you know, I just recently was writing a book, and I was in part of when I was writing the book, I realized when I'm like, I was finding myself being in the shoes that I had an opportuneness, I guess, for Haiti. And then in 2021, that was my year that like you said, you reach kind of this as a humanitarian, and a lot of people that are tuning into this they have a mindset just like you and me. They want to make an impact. They want to make a tangible difference in everything. And so hearing your story where you kind of reach this breaking point where you're like, man, I want to make a difference, but then there's this big, you know, obstacle that comes in. Mine was a sense of the assassination of the president. That broke me because because it was a sense of like, oh man, I thought things were getting better and better and better, and now we have this. And I knew right away that our country was gonna go further downhill from there, because it was just a sense of like chaotic, and like I just could not believe that happened. And there's a sense of like, man, I'm on the state side, and all my life, like years and years, I've been trying to help, and I guess save Haiti, as we say. And so when that happened, and all this stuff, you know, the border stuff, you know, 10,000 Haitians in the Texas border, all of that. And then at first it's easy and I look at it from two perspectives. I look at it as a US citizen, but I also look at it as somebody that can relate to what's happening because of having family there. When my family was personally, like, we had family members that were actually at the border. And so now it was not an issue that I could keep at arm's length and say, okay, that's theirs. It was something I had to dive in, and some of the music stuff, some of the, like you were saying, how, you know, all your plans you had to kind of hold and start trying to figure out how to sustain yourself. That was my thing. I was pushing hard on the music, going hard for Beyond Me, trying to make an impact in that sense. And then suddenly this thing happens. Now we got border that dives right into, now I'm forced to have to address it and help family in the midst of it. And in the midst of that, I lost Betty Snyder, who had rescued me and helped me get to the United States. And so I lost her. And so I'm like, man, what is going on? And that was kind of a spiraling down for me. So I really relate to your story. My question for you before we kind of begin the topic is that we have listeners here, and we have people that are tuning in that you know, they want to bring healing, and they're opportunists and everything. And since you and we have been what I call wounded a little bit, because now we're you know, back in the day, you've been with me since day one, man. That's how much we go back. So you saw the just you know, a budding entrepreneur,
growth, yeah, for sure, the growth, yeah.
Humanitarian. So I'm trying to address two people here that are tuning in. One, trying to address somebody who is at the beginning stages. They want to make an impact. They're
Mhm.
looking to make a difference. What do you have to kind of say to them, like based on your experience so far? I mean, you've had years of experience in trying to help people rebuild, all that kind of stuff. What do you say to them? Okay, that's the first part of the question, and then
Mhm.
we'll address somebody who's now kind of where we're at. We're a little bit like not as enthusiastic about this whole, you know,
Mhm.
initiative, especially when it comes to Haiti, because we've just seen this cycle again and again, and we're starting to become more apathetic
Mhm.
ourselves. So
Mhm.
let's talk about for the opportunists. What would you say? How, you know, what would be your advice for them?
Yeah. Learn and don't be afraid to pivot, right? There's a level of humility that's necessary in in any activity, really, in any relationship. So whether husband and wife, friends, or whether it's my relationship with a project, my relationship with Haiti, with my family, there's this level of going there to listen. All right. So to my wife, I need to listen first, right, before I speak, right? In Haiti, I needed to listen, and I think I did an okay job of listening, but I wasn't always very good at pivoting, right? And so it's this idea of almost like holding things loosely, not saying this is how it must be,
Mm,
um, and being able to quickly and effectively change direction,
mm,
and also being not being afraid to leave projects in people's hands, even if it fails, right? So like um, one of the boards that I'd helped start that I stepped off of, I stepped off because they weren't willing to let go of what they were doing, right? They wanted to manage and own the orphanages forever, and I was like, but if we do that, we're just kind of continuing the cycle that every other
right.
NGO does, right? We're not empowering people. We're not really helping people. We're just literally sustaining a cycle. And so, in addition to that, the third point I would add is that um, don't be offended at the culture.
Mm,
And here's what I mean by that. So in two of the orphanages that I helped start, many of the kids actually had parents, right? And so when the board found out that the kids had parents, they're like, what are we doing? Right. That's actually a common practice in Haiti, right? And in most third world countries is that the kids will have parents or family that they can go to, but the idea is that those people that they have can't support them. And
mm,
so in effort to support them, they will send them to the orphanage. And so, we can show up as Americans or Westerners and say this is how it should be done, right? So it's similar to us trying to tell people how they should do their hygiene, things like that, and then we invite bacteria into their world that never existed before, right? So,
mhm,
but it's a sense of like we go there with our moral or ethical or medical superiority and say this is how it should be done.
mm,
So, and in my opinion, the way to do that is just simply to not be afraid of the culture, but rather to embrace it.
mm,
Once you understand the people and you can talk to the people, and there's that familiarity, there'll be less of that fear that
mm.
comes from seeing something that you might not be that accustomed to. So yeah, so I guess like just those kind of points, right? Listen, be humble and be willing to pivot, and don't be afraid.
Mm. Wow, those are so important. I love, like you said, learn and pivot, because and I second that, because at the early days of Beyond Me, and those of you guys tuning in, familiarized with Beyond Me initiative, we struggle with that, man. We struggle to pivot because we were trying to figure out a model of how to do this, this charitable work. And it seemed like all these other NGOs were doing a lot of the same things, and nobody was really collaborating together on anything. And
Mhm.
so we said, man, the world really doesn't need another NGO necessarily, trying to go and reinvent the wheel. And that was kind of, so us trying to find our footing. It took a long time, simply because we were trying to just follow the model of how things were supposed to be done. And we weren't looking at, like, wait, how has God really gifted us
All right.
as an organization? And when we embraced the fact that we're not meant to do all those work.
Right,
Instead,
right,
we are more of the catalysts that are
right,
bringing people together, and then we're actually the ones giving grants to other nonprofits, which is something like, I'm like, wow, that doesn't happen. Most
right,
nonprofits are raising money for
yeah,
themselves and all that stuff. And us, we realized that we just had a special gifting, that
yeah,
we were there to be a catalyst for what was already happening and how. So I love that. Learn and pivot
yeah.
and embrace the culture. So
Yeah,
that's
I remember when I remember when you told me that you guys had got that first grant and how you used it, and I remember being just impressed at the fact that you were willing to let that go. Because you're right, most nonprofits get a grant. Hey, this is how we're going to pay our bills. This is how we're going to grow. This is how we're going to do all the things. But you guys did the exact opposite. And
mhm.
you know, and you know, and in a sense, like, you know, I don't know how many people on this podcast are believers or not, but as a believer, in a sense, it's almost what we're called to do, right? Is really to flip the narrative on its head, right? And so, you know, what you guys did was an amazing example of really flipping the narrative on its head and doing something that people didn't expect you to do. I know I didn't expect it. Like when I my first thought, granted, I was in a different place then, but my first thought when I heard that was, man, I could have did so much with that money, you know. But that's just what this is what plays in your head, you know.
Right,
But yeah,
right, right. Yeah. We which was funny, a funny story that to bounce off of that. And then I will also talk to somebody who is more where we're at. We're a little bit more seasoned experience. But before, a funny story was, because yeah, that was funny. We had raised, and for those of you that are tuning in and aren't familiarized, what we're talking about is back in 2013, 2014. We had worked really hard. By that time, Beyond Me Initiative was not established, but we were like this college campus group. Like, it was crazy. We started literally from scratch, and we built this little mini movement. Now, we went to a school of Anderson University, which is in Indiana, and it's got roughly 2,000 students right there. Well, Beyond Me was at the center. When we were at the highlight, we had everybody on campus knew what was going on. Haiti, Haiti, Haiti. It was all driven in. And it just started like that. And we participated in this challenge, the service challenge called the Super Service Challenge. And we have adopted our version of that type of challenge. But through it all, we were putting on beneficial concerts. And our whole goal was to create a beneficial album and be able to sell that, and then be able to then use that to support charities that were already doing and work in Haiti. So that's a little bit of the backstory for those of you coming in. But we had won a grant. We had won a $25,000 grant. And for, I don't know how it happened, like Manis was saying, we gave 100% of it away. Like, we didn't keep any of the funds. Like, when we were starting to become our own nonprofit, we had absolutely $0 in everything, because we had given all of that away. And it would have been just like Benny said, like, what are you doing? You can't give all. But that's what we're called. And it kind of, the funny aspect was, I'm thinking of it like Jesus. And again, we are not, I just want to say that Beyond Me Initiative is not affiliated with a certain religion or anything like that. Because Manis and I have come from a background of biblical studies, we're able to implement some of that, some of our faith base in that. So in this podcast, we are not trying to, anywhere throw religion or our personal beliefs at you. We're using these as analogies to help you understand the point. But in one of the passages in the Bible, it's like Jesus is talking about that woman that gave, 2 pennies, basically.
Little my yeah.
That was all she had.
Yeah.
And she just gives it all away freely. And then he compares that to somebody who has millions. And hey, here's 100,000, and it's not that, and he says, that woman gave 2 pennies, actually gave more, than that other man. So yeah, that was totally, we did not, it was unorthodox, and it was, so thank you for bringing that up, because I can't remember. I'm like, oh yeah, that was totally something that normally doesn't happen.
Oh
So
yeah, dude. That. I mean, yeah, because you came back to Bellingham and we met up like right after or even during. I don't remember, but I feel like I was handing you the paperwork to make it official.
Right. Yes.
And then you just told me that story, and I was like, what? I mean, I don't think I said much, but I was blown away. I was impressed. But like, to your point earlier though about, kind of like, God's calling, or just what do you feel is your calling, right? The thing that you're supposed to do, there's a pattern to it, right? And so, in a sense, you guys have found a bit of that pattern, right? To be, the enablers, the people who help, the instigators of this change, right? So, there's people who sow, there's people who reap, there's people who have these different functions, and you're finding your place in that. And that's amazing. For me, being able to say, this is where I belong, this is what I'm supposed to do, there's no better feeling. So
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And finding purpose, definitely.
Exactly.
I 100% agree with that. Now, sliding over to somebody now that's a little bit more seasoned. We've talked to somebody that's more in the beginning stages, trying to make an impact and very enthusiastic. Now, let's talk about to somebody that's kind of a little bit, not disillusioned, but just kind of now, they've experienced some hurt, maybe from some of the people they try to help. Maybe they had to step away from trying to serve and everything. What do you say to them? Like, how do we address that sense of apathy that grows after a while? Like, I've been at this, I'm not seeing a lot of change. People are still the same. I mean, I'm done. What do you say to them?
So people get into anything, right? Any sort of work or nonprofit stuff, because they have certain emotions, certain beliefs, that they can do something different, right? That they can be impactful. There are some people who get into the work simply because they want to do the work. They don't actually think they can be impactful, but I don't think that's the people we're talking to. But the people who believe that they can do a work, frequently what happens is that they forget their first love, right? They forget, why they're passionate. They forget, it becomes a drudgery. I have to get up in the morning, do this again. They lose sight of the vision that they once had, and then they obscure it with activity. And so, and it's in the midst of the activity that people frequently get frustrated, right? So in a sense, it's almost like a pulling back. Sometimes you have to slow down to speed up, right? And so it's when I was working for when I was doing business consulting, just the business consulting, I would tell people to slow down and look at their process, and in the midst of the process, make sure that each aspect of the process touches their vision, touches, the original spark that caused them to do this. Otherwise, if you just have extra things going on because the extra things just so happen, which frequently happens to nonprofits, all that stuff will cloudy the waters and just turn it into either this megalithic $1 million nonprofit, or it'll fall apart. So, it's if somebody doesn't want to be dissuaded from what they're after, they have to be able to stay in touch with that emotional resonance that said, this is why you're doing this to start with.
Right on. Yeah. So it's getting a sense of like finding back. Like, I love what you said, and I know that's got a lot of biblical roots to it, but going back to your first love and the biblical reference, in a sense, not to put words in your mouth or anything, but that biblical reference of like where I want to say like in Revelation, where John, all these different letters, and there's one churches and said, man, you've lost your first love, you strayed a little bit. And so I really like that. So for those of us that are seasoned, and I would consider myself not like super seasoned, but in the sense that been at this for a while, and yeah, and trying to still, keep it up. And this year has been, in 2023, as we're recording this, has been one of the toughest years, and experienced a lot of hurt from people that we really have poured so much resources and times with. And I'm still trying to figure out, just that healing process for myself, because of experiencing a lot of disappointments, from the outcome of trying to help. And so one of the goals with this podcast is to continue to encourage people to stay in tune with like you said, their first love, their passion to serve and to be a change maker. And so
and there's it's almost like you have to fall back in love with what you're doing, right? So that involves creating intimacy, right?
Mhm.
And so and the way to create intimacy is by learning, right? So in a marriage, my wife and I going on date nights,
Mhm.
talking, engaging, not in essence trying to prove anything or do anything, but just existing in that same space, right?
Mhm.
And so there's when it comes to something like this with work that you're doing, there's almost a sense of like peeling back again all the activity and just really looking at why am I doing this,
Right.
like it's in a sense, in effect, like a date night with yourself and this venture, right? Like how can I fall in love with this again? How can
Yeah.
I what is it that I really want to do here, so what makes a successful date night, at least in my marriage,
Mhm.
what makes a successful date night is intention, right? We're purposely doing these things for a specific reason, and we name it, right? We don't just assume that both parties know what's going on. We use intent in order to drive the conversation, in order to drive the activity, and I think the same is necessary um, for working in any sector, but specifically nonprofits.
Mhm.
You have to be able to name why you're doing it, what it's there for, what it's going to execute. Otherwise, burnt out. I mean, burnt out is huge,
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that exactly. I mean, who, as Steve Jobs would say, who would like to go to a company or do something every single day that they hate?
Right, right,
I mean, a sane person's not going to do that.
right, right.
And so it takes that passion and everything to do that. So, and I love what you said, revisiting. One of the things that I suggest, and again, I'm trying to add a little bit of practicality to help some of the listeners are saying, well, this theory is great, but how to actually, like, what
Mm-hmm,
can I do? And I was saying that vision board,
mm-hmm,
create that exercise where you just
mm-hmm,
go through and create that vision board. And one of the things that I like to do is get up like 10, 15 minutes early every single day, review that
mm-hmm,
vision board and write down all your goals and continue to become better. And because what that does is that, at least for me, it helps me when things around the world are changing. I can stay in tune with that vision. So always writing down that vision, seeing it, and reminding yourself. And I guess, again, to use that biblical reference,
mm-hmm,
it's getting that, we call it devotionals, spending
mm-hmm,
some time with God every single day to kind of help you be able to stay in tune with his spirit and
mm-hmm,
understand that you're not alone, because it's easy to get very overwhelmed when things
mm-hmm.
are going the way that we expect them to. And so I think staying that in tune with that vision. So there you
And
go.
I would add to the vision board thing to also highlight past successes, right?
Yeah. Oh,
It's easy to be overwhelmed by what you're trying to accomplish and forget what you've done, right? But
yeah.
there's the aspect, we've been in the desert for 40 years, but
Yeah.
we have this rock that we walked by 5 times that reminds us what, the goodness that has come to us, right? We have these memories, we have these stories,
Right.
and there's also an importance to like even talking it out, right? Talking out the narrative, talking out what's happening, talking out, your past successes and how you're going to feel, not just talking about your future successes, but talking about how you're going to feel once that future success arrives, right? The more we can get our kind of mind and body aligned to
Mhm.
the direction we're going, right? Once we get our mind and body aligned to correcting the past narrative, because frequently when we look at the past, we just see failure. And
Mm.
so if we can say, no, it wasn't just failure, but this happened here, there was change here, this was better there,
Yeah.
it helps kind of push you forward.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for, adding that, because I think that's a crucial part of, staying in tune with that call and everything. So, all right. So we welcome you, man. It's now we're
Thank
gonna
you.
kind of dive into what we're talking about, and something we were texting back and forth a little bit. We've been wanting to do this. For those of you tuning in, thank you, for being here. Manis and I, we have been wanting to do this podcast for a long time. We talked about it and everything, and
I'm
things.
here to think.
We're here. So we're making it happen. So that's what is super super stoked and important. And one of the things that when we're texting back and forth, Manis has said, something about, and he mentioned it a little bit at the beginning about how words impact our lives, and us kind of fine tuning to that. And so one of the things that I'm a big, personal development, reading, all of that, always developing our mind. And I think it's so important. So today we're going to kind of dive into one of, almost the word that comes to me is like ancient, but it's not ancient, but Earl Nightingale for you guys in this book that he wrote. And I'm super excited to be able to dive in. And the main thing, one of the first of all, the book is called The Strangest Secret. And in a little bit of the highlights, and I'll go through that. But one of the things that Earl Nightingale is known for is we become what we think about. And as Manis had been mentioning, because we were texting back and forth, and he's like, man, the words and how they're powerful and how they affect us. Immediately, I thought of Earl Nightingale. And so that's kind of what has led us to, it's like, hey, let's dive in. Let's do a deep dive into one of the book called The Strangest Secret. And so overall, as we begin, Manis and I will kind of go through and share our thoughts about it. And we encourage you as the listener or the viewer here to check out this book and everything, and learn about the strangest secrets and how what we think about and the words and everything interplay in helping us become who we are. But for you, Manis, we've done some extensive research, we've read, we're really ready to have this conversation. But I just kind of wanted to open up the floor for you, Manis. What were your thoughts about the book, or just in general, this conversation kind of lead us into it?
Yeah. The point in time the book was written, it was post World War II. Napoleon Hill, who I guess inspired Earl, wrote Think and Grow Rich, right? And so I'm familiar with both those books, familiar with the history, the time period. There's a lot going on. And also familiar with a lot of the philosophies that was birthed from that time period. That said, right? So any book, really, it's one of those things where you eat the watermelon and you spit the seeds out, right? So Earl Nightingale, the points that he's making, whether I agree with every fine detail, the point that he's making of like creating kind of a atmosphere that's conducive towards, quote unquote success, right? So, I think that's important. I think understanding how, words in a narrative that we tell ourselves, right, whether we're aware of them or not, and in the conversation, I'm sure I'll get more into that, but all of those things are important, and and renewing of the mind, right? So the first time I came across that that sentence was in scripture, but since then I've read it in everything from scientific journals about the plasticity of the brain to all kinds of things, right? So it's not simply a Christian fundamental belief, but it's also something that seems to be necessary in effort to live a dynamic life, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And that's what that right away kind of leads us into this talk. He talks about a little bit about there's very few, you when you explore and you see all these different philosophers, very few of there are very few points that a lot of philosophers can agree upon. And I also want to let you guys know a lot of the notes that I had taken and come from this 30-minute recording that Earl Nightingale did called The Strangest Secret. And that's kind of the deep dive that I'm doing today, because it gives something that's bite-sized and something that we all can go listen to. So in the notes and wherever this at, I'm going to link that in so you guys can take a look and listen to that 30-minute kind of speech, but also his recording that he made. But that leads us into the idea, with all these different, philosophers and all that kind of stuff, that they could really agree on the fact that our thoughts and our mindset affect us, and who we are. So what did you think about that? Just in the introduction, when he had said that, we've had a lot of different philosophers and everything, but they all can agree on this one thing. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree? What were your thoughts? Because I thought that was very interesting when he said.
We have had a lot of philosophers. Philosophy is one of those things that they build on each other, right? But I mean, if you go back even to the Greeks, right? The Greeks had a certain philosophy about, knowing yourself, on understanding who you are, right? And so if you take that, or you take scripture, right, which parallels that, right, knowing who you are in God, in Christ, right? So there's this idea of understanding the nature in which you were coming from. Well, to understand the nature in which you're coming from, you got to understand the narratives that you're using and or repeating in your life, right? So science says that we tend to, the most trauma in our life, the most whatever in our life tends to be between the first 5 to 8 years, right? So we take that and we look at, the words that we've used to describe that, and how we continue to, like let's say I failed to get love, but now I'm continually pursuing the wrong people to chase after love because I failed to get love. What is the narrative, the story, the words that I'm using to describe all that? And how do I change that if it's not by renewing of the mind? I mean, so as far as the philosophers go, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's so many, Hegel, Wittgenstein, even Freud, in a sense, like there's so many that have elucidated aspects of this thing of renewing the mind. Napoleon Hill, when he wrote it, he used the Bible verse of sowing what you reap, and I think that's what Earl that's what kind of like lit his fire, if you will. This idea that you can sow into a person or sow into yourself and reap something else. Granted, that specific verse was talking about the wrath of God.
Right.
That said, the principle of it still stays true to a point.
Yeah. And I love that idea and we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that, because I believe that goes in the idea that, you sow what you reap, that another way of looking at it is that the universe is really neutral, or nature is in a sense neutral, that there are certain principles and universal laws how nature works, and it doesn't care if you're black or white, if you're what religion or background. If you follow these simple whether it's different philosophies, the way that successful people think and everything, you do the same thing that they do, eventually you're going to get the same result. Nature doesn't discriminate and say, well, you're XYZ, so you can't achieve the same thing. It's like, so that was the idea that we can sow based on our thoughts. If we have this mindset, that we have a growth mindset and says, hey, I can become whatever I want to become, kind of because of that mindset and the way like you said, words that we're saying, we can reap that, based on that. So when I thought of the idea, like we become what we think about, I was like, man, it lets you know that, like, if you have thoughts that are super negative and everything, or suicidal, depressed and everything, pretty soon your actions kind of reap all that, so it was very phenomenal for me the first time I did this recording. Now, one of the things you talk about is, before we can even begin, we need to define success. And one of the things that Earl Nightingale says is that success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So the idea that I had right here was like, how would, number one, like, how do you define success? You agree with that type of definition for success, and just provide some examples of that.
So I'm going to touch back on something that you said a minute ago, and then
absolutely.
So myself personally, I wouldn't call nature neutral. I would call it chaotic.
Chaotic. Okay. Okay.
Chaotic, meaning that it rains on the just and the unjust, right? Good things happen to good, bad people,
Mm-hmm.
all the time. But like the thing about ourselves though, so like if we look at a long time ago, somebody taught me to do a T chart where on one side I would write the things I can control, the other side I write things I can't control, and then I would fold it over and just look at the things I can control. And nature would be on the side of things I can't control. But that said, I can impact the affects that nature has had upon me.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I grew up with a chaotic child, which I did. I grew up with a very chaotic childhood.
Yep.
Like let's say I grew up with a chaotic childhood due to my surroundings, due to nothing that really had to do with me. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
I can come to the point to where I realize that, I can possibly change some of how I think, right? So, and if you just start there, right? So I'm a big fan of the 80-20 rule, right? To where if you can change 20% of something, that 80% will soon follow.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that in mind, like starting somewhere with my thoughts to change, right? I mean, suicidal ideation, depression, those things are linked to aspects of nature, right? Chemical imbalances, genetics, and things like that. Those kind of things don't change overnight, but with consistency, right? The biggest thing in all this is being consistent. The more consistent you are, and capturing your thoughts, bringing them back, and recreating the narrative, right? So, and what I mean by that is by not being ashamed. Let's say I have a desire to love again, but I'm pursuing love in all the wrong places. So not shaming the fact that I have a desire to love, but relooking at how I view opportunities to love, and then those outcomes, and adding new words to those.
Wow.
Right. So there's that. And as far as your question goes about success,
Yeah.
So scripture, right? Glory, the word glory and success in Greek and Hebrew are kind of the same, and they both mean kind of weight.
Wow.
Right? So the weight of the thing, so your significance, or in English, your value, right? Your what is it that you are valuing, right? And so I have this equation. It's success over measurement equals value. And so what I mean by that is that, let's say I'm a leadership coach. So I may at one point in my life judge my success by how many books I sell. I might at another point in my life judge success by how many lives I've transformed. But either way, my value system is based off of that.
Okay.
And so in essence, in order for me to truly define success, I need to define, what I'm pursuing and how I'm measuring it, and that dictates my value. So he later on said something to the effect of like a school teacher who teaches, and that's what they want to do. They are successful. There's a lot of truth to that. However, frequently in the dialogue, he does use the analogy of success being a objective quantifier, right? So in a sense where success is, being good at what you do, but also making money, right? There's this caveat of making money.
Yeah.
Framing success like that, I understand it. I understand it very well. I don't know if I fully agree with it. I know for me, that's how I defined success for a long time, right? When I was in politics, I would run 20 large campaigns. I'd win, 15, 16 of them. That was a successful year for me, right? But I had no relationships. I was a raging alcoholic. I was, there are lots of things that I was doing that I shouldn't have been doing, but in my mind, I was successful. So the definition of success will vary, but understanding how we measure success and what that value statement says about us is really important.
Wow. Yeah, because it all goes back to, what we've been talking about, words,
Mhm,
the way that you define something and the way that I
mhm.
define it. Wow. And one thing I wanted to quickly follow up with you, is it possible to detach yourself from success and value? And if so, how do you do that?
Attach yourself. Tell me more.
So
What do you mean?
what I mean by that, by detaching yourself from, you talked a little bit about how, the way that basically the words we use and the way that we describe
Mhm.
the success and what we're aiming for and stuff can also determine what we value and everything.
Okay.
And I was saying that, is there a way to detach? Like, let's say I don't meet the goal. Like, I
Mhm,
can define success,
mhm,
right? But I'm not meeting it.
mhm, mhm,
So how
mhm,
do I
mhm.
not lose my value in the
I
process?
see. I
Yeah.
see. So there's so really what you're asking is, can you detach goals and success, right? And yes, you can. So goals should be actually wrote this down. I didn't know you were gonna ask this question. It's a good question. Um, Goals should be an indicator of your value, not an indicator of your success,
Mm,
right? So goals should be less of a measuring tool for your success and more as an indicator as to what your value. So let's say if I'm a minister, I'm a missionary in some country and I speak the language, right? And so my goal is to speak to 10 people about Christ daily. And let's say I hit 5 or I hit 4.
hmm
I shouldn't be deflated because I didn't hit that goal, because the goal is an indicator of my value, which is to
Wow.
go out and talk to Christians,
hmm
right? So if I'm going out and talking to Christians, therefore I am successful, right?
Mm,
So so you can separate goals from success as long as you understand that your success is in doing what you were called to do, right?
hmm
Not necessarily the goal and how you get there.
Got you. Okay. So I love that, man. I'm learning a lot. So like, so when we set goals, set goals in a way that based off your value, what
Hmm.
things that you value, rather than just saying the end result.
Yes.
Because when you set it for the end result, that may change, and you can't really control if you're even going
Absolutely.
to get there in the first place.
Absolutely.
But you say that, using that analogy, that my value is that I want to be able to connect and speak
Right.
to people that are different than me. So
That's it.
I didn't reach 10 people, but I reached 4, and it's still seen as this is a value of mine. So
Yes.
I'm just walking within it. Okay.
That's
That's
it.
thing. Very cool.
Yeah.
That's a really unique way of
Yeah.
looking.
So it kind of it kind of throws the idea of success on its head,
Yeah.
but but what it really does is it empowers you to do the thing that you value,
Yeah.
right? Without that pressure of, oh, I gotta knock on this many doors, I gotta go do this, I
Yes.
gotta do that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's so that's such a unique way to put it, because it frees you from all this, expectations and all that kind of stuff. And it's
Like it frees you from the law, right? So if we
yeah,
go back to our belief system, right, it frees us from this obligation that this is what we must do, and
yes,
it allows you to do what you're doing out of the love that you have for
yeah,
it, versus the fact that there's this number on the board that I need to reach.
right. Oh my goodness. Yes. Yeah, you can really reach that sense of freedom.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay, so let's also talk about um the other spectrum now. We've talked
Mhm.
about how words can help us define success, and how it's important to attach our words basically to what we value in life, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Now let's talk about conformity, because that's something that
Yeah.
suggests, and
Mhm.
how that can be a barrier. And in terms, we're going to try to always keep this in terms of with words.
Mhm.
In a sense, conformity could be like how certain words, society kind of defines what they are. And
Mhm.
conformity, in a sense of here, could be like, well, society may define success as having a certain amount of money, for example.
Mhm.
That's words that they put in it. And so we can quickly become conformed to that, idea that, oh man, I don't have X amount, like you said, this number on the board, I'm
Mhm.
not reaching it, so I'm not successful, that type of thing. So tell me, tell us a little bit of why do people conform to, I guess, how the society defines certain
Mhm.
things, and then how do we detach and go back to saying, no, 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 this is what needs to be what I personally value. And if it's
Mhm.
not what society values, then I have to be okay with that. How do you get to that space where you can be, to not conform to how society defines success or define how certain
Yeah.
things ought to be?
Yeah. So I'm gonna get a bit in the weeds here, so stop me and ask questions if you need to. So C.S. Lewis addresses Os Guinness and C.S. Lewis both address similar things. C.S. Lewis calls it men without chest, right? And so what he's saying is that people. He was actually at a university, I think it was Oxford, and he was talking to people. You notice that everybody had the right answers, but nobody had any conviction in their answers.
Hmm.
And it's this idea of they all had conformed, but they
Mhm.
hadn't really thought it through. So
Hmm.
conformity really is just a pattern of behavior that is the path of least resistance, right? So we all start out with a sense of a bounded reality because of our five senses. We see, we taste, we smell. So we, understand the world in a specific way. We attach ourselves to our mothers, our fathers. We understand that what's happening there is what love is supposed to be. And then from that point on, we learn to mimic, right, to copy them. So we're conforming even as babies, as children, and as we continue to do the same thing because the feedback loop is such that like this is successful if I do this. This feels good if I do this. I get dopamine, oxytocin, I get serotonin. My body tells me that these are the right things to do. And so to Nightingale's point, this idea of conformity, like I actually wrote the question down, well, what if this is what you want to do? Is it still conforming?
Mhm.
But besides for that aside, this thing of conforming simply is just the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So water, when it flows, it's going to flow through the path of least resistance, right? It's the same thing with anything else. Um, so the way that we can remove ourselves from continually conforming is by finding our center, right? Men without chest, they don't have a point of reference for what they're getting their information. They've just memorized the information. So that's all they're doing. They don't have a point of reference, right?
Mhm.
So if we can recenter ourselves in a sense, go back to what our initial emotions were that caused us to desire the thing that we desired, and then really just take a look at that. Take
Mhm.
a look at that. Take a look at the opportunities that avail ourselves, and do those opportunities just meet the need because they're what everybody else is doing, or do
Mhm.
they actually meet the need of what I'm trying to accomplish, right? So am I doing this job because it's the same job my dad had,
Mhm.
and so this is just easy for me to go be a mechanic again because that's what I know, that's what I understand. But what I really want to do is right. So
Mhm. Mhm.
my desire is both to make my family proud and happy, but also to do something for me. So in that sense, what do I do with those opportunities? So do I quit everything and write and disappoint my family? Do I just be a mechanic, or do I do some version of both? And
Mhm.
so whichever one you do, right? In this situation, in my opinion, whichever one you do isn't conforming because you have thought it through.
Okay.
So if I were to give a different definition of conforming, it
Yeah.
would be not thinking through your decisions and actions and emotions.
Wow.
But once you've thought it through, even if you do what everybody else is doing, it might be the right thing for you to do.
Yeah.
Right? You have, let's say I have a wife and 3 kids and a mortgage. I
Mhm.
probably shouldn't quit my mechanic job in order to go right in the woods somewhere.
Mhm.
Right? I probably should keep working, but at least I've thought it through and I've
Right.
had a conversation with myself and my family.
Right. Right. Oh my goodness, that's so important. And I never thought about that. And I think Earl Nightingale says, and I go back to that teacher analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Choosing to be a teacher because they deliberately made that decision. So it's a sense of like we just kind of
Yeah.
go with the flow.
Yeah.
Right? And I want to bring back, because of my background in English literature, bring back the idea of Animal Farm. I don't know if you ever read that, and a sense
Great
of
book. Love it. I love it.
yeah. And it talks about, we just kind of go with the flow. And even though we see things, we're like, wait, question. We don't question everything. That's how you get millions of, and it goes back to millions of Jews being slaughtered and all the atrocity of humanity. It's just nobody took the time to think and deliberately question, wait, why are we doing this? We just kind of, let's just keep rolling.
Yeah,
And
I mean, and if they did, they got stuck in fear, right? Because so the friction, right? The friction that's in this kind of like life equation, right? Is fear, fear of change. What happens? If there's the devil I know, then there's the devil I don't know. And so, like, am I going to just keep going and go along? Eventually, it'll get better. Like, imagine if you were in 1930s, 1940s Germany, right? It's like, oh, it's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. Like, it's not going to be that bad, And so you start to continue to tell yourself, or if you're in Tiananmen Square or anywhere, right? Rwanda, it's not going to be that bad. Haiti right now, right? It's not going to be that bad. Everything is going to get better. And so because of that friction that comes with change, and the fact that on the opposite side of that friction, when you decided to change, there's no guidebook, right? There's no way, there's nobody who's gone before you to tell you how to do this. You just have to jump out there and do it.
Right.
And so, with all that in mind, it's like, okay, do I really want to go this way, or do I just follow the path of least resistance?
Yeah. And so many, and that's what, we're talking about. So many of us, it's just easier to not think about it, just kind of coast along, than it is to like take that time. And it's that uneasiness. And one of the story that, just kind of put some context around it is like, this year's been with my teaching job, I remember just for the last 5 years I've been teaching. This is all I did. This is all I want to do, and so forth. But then around, 2-3 years into it, I'm like, man, I need to make some changes, X, Y, Z. But like you said, the fear, man, it's like, this is what I did. I went to school with, I spent so much money. I spent all the time. I've invested so much into this. And then, but the fear of change is what kept me in that place until, I was forced to kind of like, I got to do something different and resign. But it was just man, I'm telling you, there's something about that fear. So let me ask you this question. This is kind of a hard one, but how do we overcome that fear of not conforming, or, how do we, and I know you kind of mentioned about like taking that time to center ourselves back to that. Let's say we have gone through that, because we're starting to get that subconsciously that like, oh, this isn't a good fit and everything. But how do we actually go through and take that step?
Yeah. So emotions are great indicators. They're horrible decision makers, right? So fear as an indicator is telling you something that you should, hey, actually any emotion, right? It's saying, hey, you should stop and pay attention. Even happiness. If I'm overflowed with happiness, this is something I should stop and pay attention to. Depression, same thing. Anyway, so with that fear, it's saying, hey, this is something that you should pay attention to. But the only way to really get through it, so what most people do with fear is they just shove it down. I am famous for this, literally famous for this. But the correct reaction should be to embrace it as it is, which is an emotion. It's a part of you, right? If you go back to the Bible, which I'm going to briefly, right? If we are created in God's image, right? Fear is something that God has given me for a reason, and it's not that I should pay attention to it. It's not that I should accuse it or blame it or guilt it or shame it or name it something else. It is what it is. But fear in and of itself should not stop us from doing the thing that we know we're supposed to do.
Mm.
So if we can embrace it, so we tend to view fear as something that's like outside of us, right?
Mm.
It's something
Mhm.
that's attacking me, right?
Mm.
It's something that like, oh, I'm terrified, like I need to get out of the situation so I'm not terrified anymore. But if we just simply see it as like, this is something within me that I can control. This is a God-given thing, God-given gift, if you will, right? This is if that is the case, right? I hear you. I understand the concern. I understand the trepidation. I understand that this could completely change everything that I've ever done, but
Mhm.
I'm still choosing to go forward, right?
Wow.
Fear is the perfect time to take intentionality into your actions and move forward.
Mm.
Right? And that intention, right? That's
Yeah.
saying, despite this, I choose. Despite X, I choose Y.
Yeah.
That intention adds a level of power, right? So, there's a verse that says, "Faith without works is dead." Right? There's
Yeah.
plenty
Yep.
of verses that say, we need to bear fruit, right? So it's this idea of believing, right? I have hope. I believe in this thing that God or whatever you guys believe in, right? That that
Mhm.
that I have this hope and faith on the inside of me that this thing can be done.
Mhm.
And with that, despite the fear, I'm gonna move forward.
Wow. So taking into consideration that yes, fear is valid, and this is how I feel. I can't deny it and everything, but
Mhm,
I'm embracing it, and I'm choosing to move forward in an act of faith, believing that I can create a better life for myself by
mhm,
taking a step, regardless of the fact that I'm fearful of it, that fear is real, that I need to move with some form of a caution, but
mhm,
fear should not be the indicator
yeah,
that I'd not do it,
right.
type of thing. Okay. And that is one of the ways of breaking through that conformity.
Mhm,
Very, very, very good. And I think we talked about, the power of goals, and we talked about that.
mhm,
We'll kind of go through this idea now. The whole theme of this whole,
mhm.
podcast has been we become what we think about. So tell me a little bit, just like tell me a little bit what that really truly means. How do
Mhm,
the words help with that
mhm,
aspect?
mhm,
Let's really dive into
mhm.
that.
So, departing just a little bit from how he kind of structures the goal setting. For
Mm-hmm.
me personally, just like I said, goals are an indicator of my value, right? So at one point I was training for martial arts. I wanted to join the military. That didn't happen, but I was doing a whole lot of training,
Mm-hmm.
and I passionately hate running, but I was running. I was running. I think at that point 10 miles a day, and my goal would be the next tree. My goal would be the next block, right? The next roll, or just to pass that parked car.
Mm-hmm.
And so setting incremental small goals like that, right? It empowers you in the moment to get to the next point in which you can accomplish your vision, right? To where you can accomplish, that value. The value that I had in running and training was to reshape my body in such a way that was fit to win wrestling matches or join the military. That was what I was after,
Okay.
right? But it was less. It was those goals, however, were less about getting on the scale, looking at my physique and all that, and more just about incremental, small, measurable goals that I can accomplish right now. You know, and in a sense, what that did was it completely reshaped um, kind of the day to day and also like the big vision. Like
Yeah.
the big vision was something that I woke up to and I saw every day, and I said, "Yes, I'm doing this today." But those small goals, that I can accomplish daily, even as I was running, set me up to where it was like eating an elephant, right? How do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, if goals are in line with the value that you're seeking, that makes more sense in how you're measuring it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And again, I love that perspective because completely different than even what Earl Nightingale says, but it makes so much sense because I find myself personally just so disappointed when I don't meet a certain goal. But if I realize that this is based on value, and the whole
Hmm.
reason I have this goal is because I have this value that I want to implement, and I may not, do a certain number. I don't have to
Hmm.
attach a certain number as long as it's being carried out, and I have some form of a little. The number is great for measurable
Hmm.
proof.
Hmm.
I think that's important, but at the end of the day, it's about that value and being able to implement it. So that's really, really, really good. Now, with that being said, and
Hmm.
feel free to add anything else that you want with it too. So turning that with the idea of becoming what we think about,
Hmm.
how does that all play a role in helping us do that?
Yeah, I'll touch on kind of what you mentioned about measuring the goals, and then
Yeah,
I'll talk about that.
yeah.
Um, so with measuring goals, right? I love numbers. I love data. I love math in general. Um, and the idea with like measuring goals, like using measurable indicators as a point of pivot in how you accomplish certain goals is how they should be used, right? Not in the fact that you're not, that you're not successful or you're not participating in your value, but using those measurable numbers as what you can fine tune, right? So if you're a organization or business, and then the measurable outcomes are less than what you want them to be, the idea there is to break apart those measurable outcomes,
Mhm.
find out the weak points, and add fuel to those flames in order to pivot. But your value system and your success indicators are still the same.
Mm.
So using them just as a point of pivot in the tactic you're doing. So for me, once I blew up my knee running, I went full swing in the kettlebells and all kinds of like calisthenic type workouts. So I was still getting the cardio,
Mhm.
but I was doing it differently, right? So I'm still, driving myself towards the success I'm looking for with the same value statement. It's
Mhm.
just I was getting there differently, you know. So as far as your question goes, marrying that with the idea of changing who we are, right? If I understand your question correctly,
Mhm.
um, again, it kind of varies depending on what is success for that person. So let's say if somebody wants a better job, I don't know, that's the easy one that people tend to go to, or they want to start their own business.
Mhm.
You know, it's a it's a matter of really taking, again, slowing down to speed up, taking some steps back to figure out where you're actually at now, not where you're telling yourself you're at, but where you're actually at in life, in business, and everything. And that could be depressing, but there's a level of truth that's necessary with all of this, like being able to expose yourself to the truth of your circumstances, and then taking a step back and not necessarily figuring out how you got there, right? So I would actually say don't do that. I would say go back to the emotion and the desire that you had that led you there, right? For some people, it would be I want to just feed my family, so I got this job, right? For some people, it would be something else. I wanted to change the world, so did
Mhm.
stuff in Haiti. But whatever that desire was, look at that. Really consider that, is that really what you're after? And then from there, better understand the opportunities that got you where you're at and the opportunities that will get you where you're going. And so to explain this in a bit more complicated sense,
Mhm.
our bounded reality, so that reality that we create and how we understand the world, what our presuppositions are, our assumptions, the priori knowledge that's just given to us that we don't even think about, that we know, right? All those things that go into our unconscious decision making, there's a part of that we need to analyze to be able to see what other opportunities are that avail themselves for us now, right? And so with that, once you can consider what your sensations are, emotions are, desires, your wants, your needs, and then what new opportunities that are outside of just what you understand the world to be. From that point, you can then create different outcomes. But until you can see new opportunities, if you remain the same person, you will still see the same opportunities, right? So you have to go back to understand, where you started at. And it's not about changing those desires. It's not about, it's not about saying, well, instead of feeding my family, I just need to live for myself, right? That's not what we're doing here. It's more about understanding that desire is, one, God-given. Two, is probably the right thing to do, is to feed your family. And with that in mind, what opportunities did I limit myself from because I only saw the world in a certain way? I only saw the world because my mom told me that I would never be more than this, right? Because my dad told me I would never be more than this, because I'm some Haitian boy in Washington State, and I'm the darkest thing out here, right? Whatever that narrative is that's feeding that lie, it creates those opportunities. So
wow, that's incredible. Realizing, and I think that's, man, so right, so many good points, because it's realizing how we've been wired and what other words that we've allowed people to come into our minds that said, man, I think this way, but like I need to take a second and almost like reflect on, why do I think this way, and what circumstances and what people have I allowed to come into my life and kind of put their thoughts, whether it's positive or negative, that have impacted me the way I'm becoming. Am I like this because, so and so, like you said, had told me that you're not gonna amount to anything, you're XYZ. And wow, so that was the idea. And I also kind of want to bring that back into the, sowing and reaping, because like the way that we behave and the way who we're becoming can be, a reason due to some of the stuff that we've experienced in the past. And that's being able to realize, like, wow, I need to take a second, reflect on that. And then once I know that, like you said, be able to bring those two things together and look for new opportunities, so I can become hopefully a better version of myself, or really start to understand and define myself and my goals and who I want to be in a different way now, and have the vocabulary maybe and the means to be able to do that. So man, that is incredible. So wow, like I want to we have so much more that we can dive in, but I know that we've got to kind of start wrapping things up. But man, that is just that is so cool. And Manis, I just wanted to give you a second as we're kind of wrapping things up a little bit, but overall, just kind of share anything that's kind of in your mind a little bit, any way that from this whole topic we've talked about becoming of who we are, our thoughts, and how it has really helps us, and being able, or can, like, as we just talked about, can hinder us. So is there anything else? I just want to open the floor to you. Anything else that you want to add, or anything like that? So
I'll talk about Earl a little bit, and then I'll talk about more of the subject, I guess. If you can remove kind of the person from the contents, if you will. So Earl Nightingale, 1940s, 1950s. He's one of the 15 people to survive the Pearl Harbor bombing on the boat, right? So he survived it, came back, became a broadcaster, and made lots of money doing self-help type stuff, right? Which good for him. He actually lived a pretty decent life, it sounds like. He was a good person. Napoleon Hill was a bit different. He was a crook, but he wrote an amazing book. So, but like if you consider these people, right, because the Bible is full of flawed people, and that's on purpose. It's full of people who are crooks, murderers, rapists, and so on and so forth, right? So if we take the content of what they're saying, right, and for Earl, kind of distilling the fact that he really was in a golden age at the time, right? They just invented They just invented rubber, synthetic rubber. They just invented plastic, all these other things. Like the economy was booming, so he had lots of opportunities in front of him. So removing the language that he's using, and you take that concept of just words are impactful. That just that simple concept that words can change you, and that narrative, right? I think that is what people should really look at taking when they listen to him, right? Because if you listen to him with our own like first world, 2023 prejudices, all we're going to hear is hierarchical language, patriarchal language, and things like that. So really kind of getting, if we can, and if you can't, that's fine, but getting past that and hearing what his heart is, and his heart is change. So with that in mind, as far as words themselves go, right? For for me, I talk a lot in certain groups about narratives, about how we frame things, how we see things, and really, about going back and separating, the emotions from the trauma, right? I wanted to feel love. I went to the wrong place. I got molested. I got raped. And so that then I just throw the fact that I wanted to feel love out the window. But being able to bring that in and reframe it, just because I wanted to feel love doesn't mean that I deserve for that evil to happen to me. Just because I want to feel love doesn't mean that, and it's the same with anything, right? So there's got to be something like majorly traumatic, but also making sure that you also have the words, and then you can talk, that you can adequately name your emotions, right? So being able to say that I wanted to feel love, being able to say that I wanted to take care of my family, that part, more than anything else I've talked about, being able to name those things, those sensations, is the place to start, because once you can identify them, that point you can begin to build off of the truth of that's who you are, right? There's a big part of this that's just knowing who we are as people. And in order to know who we are as people, we have to be able to sit in a place to where, yes, I'm feeling this way, and it sucks. Or even, and that's even if the person has like a mental illness, bipolar, depression. Yes, I am depressed and it sucks, but it doesn't mean that it has to drive, all of my outcomes. It doesn't mean that it has to, I'm not just a result of my chaotic past. Those type of things.
Wow. Yeah. Oh man, so much good that comes out of that. And I love the aspect that you talked about, where it's being able to, if I can really find the words, to describe, either how I'm feeling, how I'm doing, and even starting with that is I can slowly, over time begin to kind of build and reconstruct and define who I am. Wow. So that's huge. That's huge. Because you think about all these great achievers and everything. And sometimes I wonder what is going on in their mind. How are they, this is just an example, but Michael Jordan in the flu game, I obviously was not alive to see it, but at that time I was not, able to see it, but just, I was wondering what words were going in his mind. Most of the people were like, I'm sitting this one out, what made him. And so I always think about, now that you kind of bring that up, the importance of like, wow, what words am I using to describe myself, and how are they affecting me and the way that I think? So I guess in a sense, as I try to summarize, but also wrap us up, is I would actually, one of my questions to you is that now that we've had this discussion, what are some major takeaways, would you say? I know I kind of tried to summarize one as being very clear and being able to take some time with ourselves, sit with ourselves, and be able to think about how we define ourselves, what kind of words that we use, when it comes to goals, when it comes to personal development, whatever we want to try to achieve, taking some time and really defining what that is and the words that we use. I would call that, like, is there any clear, I guess my last question to you would be like, is there any clear takeaways, steps that we could do using some of this stuff that we've talked about, and what would they be, for
Yeah, I
individuals?
mean, to start, I would something I've done in the past is just a journal, right? So, and not like a journal at the end of the day, a journal, although I have done that, but that's not what I'm talking about here. It's
Mhm.
really like, this is what I'm feeling, and then I would think about why I might be feeling that. But here's the thing about feelings is
Mhm.
that frequently they are tied and associated to so much other things
Mm.
that the why you're feeling it is just something you're telling yourself, right? So let's say I've had a rough day all
Yeah.
day,
Mhm.
come home, or my wife comes home and like we get in a huge argument, and so I
Mhm.
write, I'm angry because my wife did X.
Mm.
That's not necessarily true. I'm angry because I've been holding tension all day, and
Mhm.
then it just released because this is the safest person around, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
just really gaining the words to describe the emotions, and then using my wife coming home, like analyzing that less as the reason why, but the opportunity in which that emotion was expressed, and
Mm.
how I could express it in a different way, right? So really thinking about it like that instead of like, so we are causal people, right? We look for reasons, cause. We're very linear, x to y, right? Y to z,
Yeah.
right? And instead of doing all that, just really like, x is my emotions, y is the opportunity, z is the outcome, but y, the opportunity, wasn't what led to my emotions. My emotions just happened because of whatever I wasn't paying attention to,
Mm.
whatever I wasn't dealing with, all that subconscious stuff. But the better we get to do, the better we are dealing at the opportunities, the better we end up dealing with the reasons why we're mad to begin with.
Mm.
And that's kind of the beauty of it, right? Because if we can learn to express grace and love one direction, right, we end up learning how to express grace and love to ourselves as well.
Wow.
So that's, so instead of, and that's a big reason why I think the Bible is full of, Christians doing actions, because the more we do love, the more we receive love, and not just from those people, but from ourselves.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Man. So good. So good. Of being able to, I have to kind of think about that. Yeah. Man, that is so good. Of thinking about like just the way that, how we think can also impact, how others think. And then it's kind of this ongoing type of relationship.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like, wow, that's incredible.
Mm.
And it really starts with us, taking the time and dealing with our emotions. And like you said, I love like the key word that you keep using is the opportunity.
Mhm.
The more we think about what we're trying to do and reflect, the more we can start seeing
Mhm.
um the opportunities for us to react differently and
Right.
say, yeah, this happened and this is how. And pretty soon when we do that enough time, it becomes almost autopilot.
Yes.
We'll
Very much so.
we'll start we'll start to to do it, and that's incredible.
Yeah,
So,
it what happens is it slows you down, right? It
yeah.
slows you down to speed you up, right? So I can be very reactionary. I have been a good chunk of my life. All right, something would happen, I'd react, I'd blow up, I'd lose my cool, whatever.
Mhm.
Um, Thinking about things like this has made me kind of slow down. Think about where I'm at,
Mm.
what's going on in me, name it, and then look for ways to be different. So despite, because here's the thing, right? It's not that we won't be angry. It's not
Yeah.
that we won't have lust. It's not that we won't be driven. Like you and I are both driven people, right? It's not
Yeah.
that we won't be driven. It's not that we won't want to do these things, but how we deal with it is what matters, right? And so if I can deal with it in a way that encourages, either more opportunities or encourages to show myself or somebody else compassion, that is a better direction. That process is what changes me, right?
Mm.
So
Wow. 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 Being able to, yeah, to name it and then begin to create change. Wow. Well, guys, man, Manis and I, we go back. We can keep doing this for hours and hours and talking. We can.
We can. Yeah, for sure.
But I want to respect everybody's time and just first of all, just want to thank you, Manis, for making this time. And
Appreciate you, man.
we did it, man. We're making it. We did it. We talked about it, and now we're implementing.
2 years later.
Yes. So super excited about this. I can't wait for people to check out this episode and everything. It's gonna be really good. And I think all the stuff that we've been able to say, everything you shared, has been so impactful for me. And now I'm gonna have to spend a few minutes and and go through a lot of the stuff that we talked about. Manis, I don't know how you are with social media, but working, if some of our listeners want to check up on you and see what you're doing, connect with you in any way, or if you have any questions, where can we reach you at?
I mean, Facebook would probably be the easiest. That's really the only place I have a presence these days. Like, I think LinkedIn as well.
Okay.
I guess I should know my handles. I just really feel like I have to just give out my email, and that'd be a whole lot easier. Yeah.
And my very last questions, because this is in tune with Watson Tunez and the idea of healing and everything. This one is a little bit off topic and everything that we discussed, but if you were to bring healing to the world, to yourself or any way, what do you, how would you do it? What's an area, just tell us a little bit about, what does healing mean to you? Anything you want to say on that?
Healing. What does healing mean to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a broad question, right? And I say that because, like, people need healing, spirit, soul, and body, right? So, I can give the generic, answer of Christ coming, but no, there's a physical nature to healing, right? Movement, flow, body mechanics, right? I read a book a while ago called Body Keeps the Score, and it's about people with trauma and how it gets locked into your body, right? So myself, as a survivor of trauma, yourself, body gets real tight, anxiety gets real high, we don't, and then we express it in these ways. And so the idea of just being able to freely move, not be stiff, right? I feel as if that idea of flow, right? True flow, whether in whatever state, when I used to wrestle and do MMA, the best wrestling matches were when me and my opponent, it was like water moving back and forth, right? It was just very seamless. And so to me, healing kind of encompasses a lot of that, the fact that we can freely move about the world, freely flow about the world, and be like water, right? To where things just flow around us, or we move around it, to where we're not affected by it, but we are going to the destination we're going to the larger body of water, right? The source of all water, right? So to use some Bible references, but, it's this idea of just freely being able to move, not just in my body, but in my mind, and my heart, that to me is healing. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Wow. Yeah, that's an incredible definition of it. So very thoughtful. Most people would I want to see this change, that was beautiful. Well, man, it's been a pleasure, man, to be down with you, talk about all the early days to our thoughts and how they influence us, and then to hearing kind of your perspective on healing and everything. And everybody, to you, Manis has been just a great friend of mine. So you guys want to be sure to reach out, connect with him. He's a great guy, and again, he's been with me since day one of starting Beyond Me from absolutely scratch. Tell you the story we can talk.
I remember giving you that paperwork and then having an internal conversation with myself. If you're actually going to file it. Yeah, it was huge. It was huge. I was like, he's not gonna do anything with that. And sure enough, he found it.
Yeah, it was. I was like,
It was
whoa,
huge.
man.
It was huge. Yeah, totally.
Wow. So, well, anyway, man, I hope you have just a blessed day.
You too, brother.
And
too.
just tell wife we say hello over
You
here.
too, wife and kid. Yeah, man. Yeah,
Oh.
for sure.
And yeah, so we'll talk with you soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate the opportunity. We'll talk soon later.
All right, take care. Bye. Oh, all right, guys, stay blessed. This is Watson Tunez, and I'll see you next time.
In Tune with Watson Tunez is brought to you by the Live Beyond You Service Challenge. Visit livebeyondyou.org to join the service challenge and help your favorite charity win up to $5,000. Come be part of an initiative to raise $1 million to give away to charities that are contributing to making the world a better place and bringing healing and restoration into your local community.